Welcome to Oh Hell No with Nicole.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today I have Kim Hester. He is an author and a world traveler. Welcome, Kim.
Welcome. Good to be with you.
Nice to have you. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, when did you discover that you enjoyed writing?
Oh, that's been long ago. I have a little story on my author website at kimhesterauthor.com about writing a little story for a high school English class. I was kind of rewarded by the teacher by her calling me to the front of the classroom to read my story to the class. So she helped me get started in writing.
Wow. So you've been doing this for most of your life.
Yes, I've been doing a lot of writing. For many years, I worked on nonfiction. I was an educator, and I wrote educational books. But some time back, I decided to accept the challenge of fiction writing. So I've been writing fiction for a number of years now.
Wow. When did you start to travel and realize that that was another passion for you?
Well, I've traveled a fair amount. My specialty in education has been second language education. So to make a long story short, I've been a language teacher in foreign countries. And so that took me, first of all, to the South Pacific, to the Fiji Islands. And I worked in schools there in a university, and I spent about 5 years working in the Fiji Islands. Later, I got a job in Saudi Arabia, and so I traveled there. I spent a real long time in Saudi Arabia. I spent a total of 14 years there. 1 year of that, I was a refugee to Bahrain, which is a nearby country to Saudi Arabia, because of terrorism. There were terrorist attacks in my neighborhood in Saudi Arabia. So I commuted for about 1 year from Bahrain to my job in Saudi Arabia.
Wow, that's a bit of a commute.
Well, it was roughly an hour one way.
Oh, okay. So it's not as bad as I thought. Wow, that's really interesting. So was it just that you went to live in Saudi Arabia because of teaching, or did you just like the culture and wanted to live there?
No, it was only because of my work.
Okay. What was the hardest thing to adapt to living in the Middle East?
Well, I was kind of in a constant state of cultural shock all my 14 years there. Things are so different. And the Saudis don't really like Americans. They have a great deal of animosity, in fact, toward Americans and toward Westerners in general. So I experienced that animosity quite a few times, and it was difficult to live there.
How easy was it for you to follow the rules? Because I know they have a lot of rules.
Yeah, it was not easy. They required my wife, she lived with me part of the time in Saudi Arabia. They required her to wear a covering. They call it an abaya. It's a black robe, and that she had to wear. And if she didn't wear it, she would be intercepted in public by the religious police. And we had a friend who went through that experience, and she was taken in to the police office, and she and her husband had to sign a form saying that they would comply with the rules. And I think actually she was wearing that abaya, but her husband in a jewelry shop tried to help put on a necklace around her neck. And the religious police said that was forbidden, was unlawful mingling of the sexes. So there were a lot of little things like that made life kind of miserable for me and my wife.
So how did your wife feel about living there for such a long time with all of these rules and regulations, especially on her? Because, we know that the rules are very different for women in Saudi Arabia. So did that cause any problems with you guys in terms of, just contention at home?
Well, there were a number of problems that arose. It was real tough on her and tough on me too. Let me give you one idea. When we were there, women were not allowed to drive. And so my wife could not go out in the daytime while I was at work and go shopping or go see friends or things like that. And she was kind of stuck at home. And you know how that is, being stuck in one place, you get kind of cage crazy. And so she would rely on me to drive her places. And I would go to my work and work a full day and come home many days pretty tired in the hot, dusty weather there. And I would have to take my wife around, even though I didn't feel much like it. And so that was one of our difficulties. It was hard on both of us.
Well, I'm glad that you guys survived it. You're stuck together, and now you're not living there anymore. So good for you. So tell us a little bit about your new book. It's called, how do you say this? Is it BT Brune?
Bait brune. It's a French word, translates to English as brown beets. Bait brune.
Nice. Okay. The Saga of Judith Sanders. What was the inspiration for this book?
Well, I wanted to share some of the things that I experienced in Saudi Arabia and also the Fiji Islands with my readers. I wanted to show them the culture of Saudi Arabia, which is a very different kind of culture from Western culture. It's known as the mysterious kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So that was one of my main motivations. Also, conversely, I wanted to show my readers the really warm and loving atmosphere and environment in the Fiji Islands.
Nice.
In the Fiji Islands, people are so welcoming and friendly. It is really amazing.
Wow, yeah, it seems like you really enjoyed your time in the Fiji Islands.
Yes, I did. In fact, I married my wife from the Fiji Islands.
Oh, nice. So, what do you love the most about the Fiji Islands? The beaches, the food, the people?
Well, especially the people, the landscape also. I really like the tropical environment like in Fiji Islands. And it's a year-round kind of spring there. They don't have a severe winter, unlike us. And so it was pretty pleasant living there, but the people are very friendly. Let me give you an example. If you can walk down the street in the Fiji Islands, including in the cities, people will smile at you. People will greet you and be friendly toward you. Even in the cities, this happens, and it's especially true in the countryside. The people are very welcoming into their homes. There's a saying you've heard, I'm sure, that there's no free lunch. Well, that is not true for the Fiji Islands. In the Fiji Islands, people are so loving, they welcome strangers into their homes. One of the things I used to do in my free time and my vacation periods was I'd go down to the wharf in Suva, the capital city of the Fiji Islands, and I'd just look for a ship to carry me somewhere. I didn't know where I was going. I just wanted to explore. I would get on the ship and sail off into the distance and come to a little island, and I'd get out from the ship, and I'd go, and people would greet me and meet me and invite me into their homes. So they were very loving and welcoming.
So is the crime rate really low over there?
Well, yes and no. Overall, yes. It's pretty low, especially in the countryside. Some places in the cities, there is some crime.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I can't really say that it's free of crime.
Right, because, letting strangers into your home, I'm a New Yorker, so, that's just never a good idea. But, maybe in other places, it's a little bit more, relaxed and loving.
Yeah, in fact, they did that to me so many times. I got into the spirit of the country, and I started inviting strangers in my home. I went on vacation once, and I met some people from Papua New Guinea, and I invited them out for dinner, and I told them if they needed a place to stay, they could stay in my home while I was gone. And I did that, and I didn't experience any real significant problems as a result.
Wow, Kim, that's really nice of you.
Well, they were nice to me.
Okay, that's fair. So, what have you learned about yourself from traveling the world?
Well, I've learned to really appreciate my home country and home culture. While I really like the Fiji Islands and the culture and the people there, my experience in traveling and around the world, and especially in the Middle East, makes me realize how many blessings and wonderful things we have in the United States of America. Here, it's fairly safe. In Saudi Arabia, I had to watch my back. There were so many attacks on Westerners there and murders. And there was a terrorist attack on my neighborhood that killed a lot of people. And that's why I fled to Bahrain as a refugee for about a year. So I really appreciate being able to walk around a relatively peaceful environment that I have here in the United States.
Wow. So let me ask you, when you were living there, were you living in like a community that was made up of other foreigners, or did you just have to find a place to live amongst the natives?
I did some of both, but mostly I lived in sheltered communities.
Okay.
For a long time, I stayed in a place called Ural Village in Al-Kabar in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia, near the Persian Gulf. This was a guarded community. Because of the terrorism and the many attacks on Westerners in the country, I needed some protection for myself and my wife. Even in my neighborhood, there were attacks on such housing communities. Fortunately, my own particular community did not come under such an attack. But I lived in this community, and we had soldiers guarding the community with guns and machine guns.
Wow. So, back to the other question I asked you about what you learned about yourself. Tell us what you learned about people and how they live from traveling the world. What would you say is a commonality?
I've learned that there are decent and good people just about everywhere. So especially that was true in the Fiji Islands. But I've traveled to Asia and India and Japan, and I met many decent, wonderful people there also. I'm a kind of a cultural buff. I like exploring different cultures and learning about people, meeting people from different cultures. And in fact, I've written a book called Culture and Language in Developing Society about the topic of culture and cultural change. So I really enjoy meeting people from different cultures. I've learned that there are many decent people in just about every culture.
That's great. Do you speak any other languages fluently?
Not really. I've studied a lot of Spanish, and I speak some Hindi because Hindi is a major language in the Fiji Islands where I lived a long time, and it's the mother tongue of my wife also. So I picked up some Hindi over the years.
Oh, okay, cool. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to write a book but doesn't know where to start?
Well, writing is one of the more challenging language skills. As a language teacher, I taught a lot of skills, speaking, listening, grammar, and so forth. And writing is, I guess, the most complex and difficult skill of all. So if you really want to be a writer, you got to take it step at a time and realize that the results may not come right away, at least for, really good, accomplished writing. Another thing I advise is to practice. Writing and language skills are kind of like sports skills. And to be a good soccer player, you got to go out on the pitch and practice fairly often to get good. If you don't practice, much and you go into a competition, possibilities are you won't do so well. So writing and language skills in general is the same also. You got to practice, practice, practice.
Okay. Do you feel like you are following your passions in life by traveling, exploring other cultures, writing these books, and sharing what you've learned about other cultures with people?
Yes, it gives me satisfaction to know people are reading my writing, reading my book, this novel that came out fairly recently. Because I think that from my experiences around the world, I've learned some things that are of value, that can be of value to the readers.
Awesome. So this is the Oh Hell No podcast, Kim, and Oh Hell No is a phrase that, we sometimes think when something unexpected happens to us or someone does something to us that, is definitely unexpected and we're taken aback. So these things never stop us from, continuing on our journeys, but they always do stick out in our minds sometimes and remind us of certain things and help us to grow and carry on. So I always ask my guests to share an oh hell no moment that they've experienced along their journey. And I'm sure you have tons of them. But could you share one with us that has taught you a valuable lesson or something that's just interesting and funny?
Well, I learned those kind of lessons, especially in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. Things were so hostile to Westerners there that I found I had to rely not just on my own wits and my own talents, I had to rely on God quite a bit. So when I was in Saudi Arabia, my spiritual life kind of blossomed as I was being oppressed by the culture and the people there. There were so many dangers for Westerners when I was living there. Housing compounds, as I said, that housed Westerners were attacked and bombed and people were killed. Even driving down the street on a normal day, Westerners, when they stopped at stoplights, sometimes the locals would come up and shoot them through their window and kill them. So it was not easy. I had to be on my guard just about all the time. And I, as a person, am not strong enough to withstand all the dangers by myself. I was in the Marines, but I was not allowed to have weapons, guns in Saudi Arabia. There they prohibit the expatriates and the foreigners from owning them. So I knew how to use guns, but I knew that I wouldn't be able to face AK-47s with my own martial arts skills. So to make a long story short, I turned to God quite a bit in Saudi Arabia, and I really strengthened my spiritual life and my prayer life. So that helped me a lot.
Wow, that is an oh hell yes moment.
All
So,
right.
yeah, that's amazing. So, do you feel like that's still the case today in Saudi Arabia? Because I know that a lot of Americans take opportunities over there because they pay, so much more money to take a position over there. Do you think it's still, as bad, or do you feel like it's calmed down a little bit?
Well, I keep up with news about Saudi Arabia, and I know there have been some things that have been positive. They've allowed women to drive, for example. So that's good. I explained the difficulties my wife and I had because of that problem, that stricture when we were there.
Yeah.
But I think the mindset of the Saudis is so different from Western mindset, and that it's not going to change that quickly. I think they're going to continue to have animosity toward Westerners. I can even go so far as to say that they hate Americans and Westerners. It's unfortunate I have to say that, but they do. They manifest it in so many ways. They manifested it in so many ways to me and my wife while we were there. And so I don't see there's going to be major change in the culture of the Saudis.
Right. Yeah. Okay, well, it was such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for coming on and telling us about your new book and a little bit about yourself. Um, can you tell us where we can go to keep up with you and find out what new stories you have coming out or new books or anything that you're working on?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I have an author website, and that's where I list some of my writings, and they're available for sale on the website, actually, also. But my novel is available for sale in many sources. But my author website is kimhesterauthor.com. That's kimhesterauthor.com. And I write on the website about my background in writing and in traveling some also. My book, Bet Brune, is available from Amazon, from Barnes & Noble, and I think it's going to be available in other sources pretty soon. It's available as an ebook and also as a print book.
Okay, well, we'll keep our eyes out for you, Kim.
All righty, I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.